stardust, so shine.
Peace and blessings, family, and welcome to Labors of Love podcast. We are here to inspire, uplift, and enlighten. Each episode, we will be hearing from Black midwives, doulas, and other traditional childbirth supporters who have dedicated their lives to being of service to Black mothers and families in all aspects of the motherhood journey. This evening, I have the privilege of speaking with Desiree Cameron. Desiree is owner of Birthing Abundantly Maternal Services, LLC, serving as a certified lactation consultant and full spectrum doula, capable of supporting mamas experiencing risk births and postpartum recovery. She also fully supports the BIPOC and LGBT community. She is originally from the East Coast, now a resident of Detroit, Michigan. After having two children prematurely and experiencing disparity and the lack of adequate support in the medical system, Desiree was encouraged to be an advocate for women, especially women of color, offering some light and devising an action plan to meet women at the point of need pre and postpartum. She is a self love advocate, reminding mothers to recognize their power. Thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so grateful to have with us Desiree this evening. We're just going to jump right in the conversation. So, Desiree,
Yes.
prior to becoming a birth worker and a mother yourself, what were some of your messages growing up and up until adulthood in reference to pregnancy, labor, delivery, the entire process?
Mm. So just motherhood in just as it is was definitely celebrated in my family and how I grew up. We knew that mothers were supposed to be treated at the topmost best, one, and two, that we do labor through a lot as being mothers. So coming from a Caribbean home, my parents are from Jamaica, so have coming from a Jamaican family, mothers is like number one in the family. Um, but when it came on to breastfeeding and natural births, it wasn't really talked about. And also, once family that moved to the States, it was like C-sections and, formula was another conversation that kept happening too. So when I ended up having my children and I was saying, I'm going to have a natural birth and I'm going to be breastfeeding my babies as long as they want to be breastfed, it was kind of like, doesn't the babies bite you around that time, when they have teeth? Or, no, you sure you want to do that at your house? Wouldn't you want to do it at the hospital with, professionals that know what they're doing?
Mm.
So that was kind of the mindset. But thankfully, I did have parents that did trust me and trusted that I was going to do the best for my children. And even though I wasn't able to have a natural birth like I wanted to, they still really trusted my thoughts on how I wanted my birth and what I wanted it to look like.
Wow, wow. No, that's beautiful. And I think, just from what you're saying around what other people's ideas are in reference to just that whole change culturally. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, coming over to the States and how we somewhat assimilate to what is traditional here. And even that hasn't been traditional for very long. But that whole idea of the hospital birth and receiving those kind of a little pushback from the peripheral of, oh, you're going to do that? Oh, and then to be, so what was it about the information that you came across, or what was it about you that allowed you to stay focused on what your desire was around birth?
Yeah, social media is one for sure. I've always had a liking to taking care of women who were pregnant for some reason as a child. Even babies before 1 years old always like touched my heart. And I have a lot of aunts that's what they did. They always took care of people's children. That was just everybody came to my aunts' houses because they just treated anyone that came to their home that were friends of their children were their children. That's how they kind
Mhm.
of saw it. So for me, I did a lot of research on my own. I found out that there was natural birth based off of social media that women had, and I said, "Oh, that's something that I want to do," because my experiences with doctors in the past weren't the greatest, honestly. So I was asking myself, do I really feel comfortable putting my birth in a person's hands that I don't really trust, and I should trust more myself and how I birth? So that's what came to mind.
Mhm.
Also, just being around women that believed in natural birth, that was actually something that really um, encouraged me too. So, and these were Black women. So it encouraged me too to know that, okay, I can advocate for myself and make a birth plan that I want to birth my own child. That's huge. So I did end up getting a doula, and at that time I didn't find any Black doulas. So I ended up getting a doula, a Caucasian doula, and I was saying natural birth and having a doula. My husband didn't feel comfortable about me having a birth at home. So we looked at birth centers, and then we looked at hospitals. And I did a lot of research on doctors too as to who was going to do the birth with me. And I ended up finding a Black doctor that which I really, really liked.
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of how my mindset had changed when it came to um, finding other options of birth that are natural versus just going to the hospital and having a baby.
Oh wow. So it sounds like you seem to have been really proactive and just, identify what your desire was and how to put the pieces together to make that happen. So was this something that you began to think about once you became pregnant? Was it something you were exposed to, when you were even considering? Like at what point? Because I find with most people, including myself, I really didn't, like, in my mind, everybody just went to the hospital, right? Like, and until I was in that position where it was like, oh, I have an option. And that
Hmm.
wasn't until I was pregnant. Then it was like, okay, well, what are these options? So were
Hmm.
you privy to it prior to you were pregnant, or was it once you all found out you were pregnant, it was like, okay, well, I want to do this a little differently.
Yeah, I had made the decision beforehand that this is something that I wanted to do. So even before I even became pregnant, I was like, I gotta fast, I gotta go on a raw food diet. I want to make sure I cleanse my body before I decide to even have a baby. I wanted to get rid of birth control after at least a year before I decided to have a baby because I wanted my body to be clean. So these are the kind of the things that I grew up with a family of herbalists. They're
Mm.
big on in herbs and things like that. So cleansing your body by fasting was a big thing that we always did. So in my mind, I got to clean my body so that I can be ready to be able to birth. So
Ooh.
that's what kind of came in my mind before having children. And then visiting doctors. Once I told them that I'm ready to have a baby, I was kind of recognizing the way how they act. It was kind of like, okay, you do this, 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 and that, then you're gonna have the baby, and then it was just it wasn't very welcoming. And I get it, it's their job, they do this every
Mhm.
single day. But in my mind, I was asking myself, do I want to be experiencing that while having a birth? So those were the things that were coming through my mind, because I feel like society downplays women birthing a child, a human being in this world. I feel like it's very downplayed. And so because it's downplayed when we're in the hospitals giving birth, it's very like, get this done. Okay, another baby's born, blah, blah, blah. And they don't see it as this is a big deal. This woman should feel empowered to be able to birth, and also congratulate them for being able to birth this child for so long.
Now that is powerful, and I truly appreciate just the angle that you've come from and your the preparation, because I feel like that is so key in having desirable outcomes. And like you said, like the fasting and the preparation beforehand, the vetting of the doctors and the things like that to make sure that you're not making decisions in a space where it's you're vulnerable, or like it feels like dire straits. So is that something that you take into your practice as far as supporting other mothers? Like, is this an education that you give to, I'd like to say, like, even younger people who aren't even considering right now, but just so
Mhm.
that you understand the full picture. And like you said, the magnitude of what it is that you're undertaking, bringing a
Mhm.
life earthside.
Yeah. The mothers that I have supported, which is interesting because both of my births were high risk, all the mothers that I've been dealing with or helping or supporting, I should say, all
Mhm.
have been high risk
Okay.
moms. And it started from having a baby, losing the baby, so
Mhm.
loss, freezing their eggs because they
Mhm.
couldn't find anyone to be with. And so they decided to freeze their eggs, IVF, going through the entire IVF intro the IVF process. So that's how I've been supporting moms. So I've my approach has always been to be as holistic as possible. And what does that mean? Like with medications or like when you're pregnant and you have allergies, finding other ways to reduce your allergies, which is just some warm hot steam or putting your steaming your face with some neem leaf.
Mhm.
Um, or if you're about to freeze your eggs, making sure that you at least fast for like 2 days just to kind of like clean your body out because you really want this to work, because you still have to kind of go through that IVF process before you decide to freeze your eggs too. So that's a whole process in itself as well. And even those mothers who have lost, their breast milk starts to produce sometimes, depending on how far along they are, their body's adjusting. So talking to them about certain herbs that can help them kind of heal their body again and help their mood. That's another thing. And two, doing like yoga and restorative yoga, and getting outside in nature and doing those kinds of things, more holistic things to kind of get them into the space where even when I'm not there, they're able to bring that up as a habit to kind of keep them grounded, one,
Mhm.
and two, to be able to hear their body back to when it's time, if they wanted to have a baby again.
Wow. Wow. No, that's definitely powerful and beneficial. At what point did you know that you wanted to support other women in this process?
Yeah. When I my both my birth experiences, as much as I wanted a natural birth, they ended up being in the hospital. I had both of my children at 1 pound 6 ounces at
Okay.
29 weeks, and so it was a very traumatic experience for me for both experiences. And um, the first experience, I tried to be as holistic as possible, but I was so unaware of what was happening because I wasn't expecting to have the baby so early.
Mhm.
So, with moms that I support now, after having those two births, I decided I have to support moms in this kind of space because when my children were in the NICU, they were in the NICU for 3 months.
Mm.
Um, there was a lot of moms in there. And I know when I had birthed my first child in New York City, we kind of shared a room. So there was probably like maybe like 10, 15 um, beds, baby they call it incubators, but not incubators, but cribs
Okay.
in one room, and
Mhm.
then they would have the parents just have a chair right next to the beds.
Wow.
So like for me, I'm going through this and I'm doing everything that I can to support myself. And I noticed the things that I was doing was working for me. It was keeping my mind right, even though it was still tough. It was
Gotcha.
keeping my mind right. Once I was able to get through all that process of birthing my own children and dealing with all that, I realized there just needs to be a lot of support when it comes on to supporting moms who are having high risk births and even the postpartum care, especially after a mother has a baby in the NICU. So
Mm.
that's where it came about of me supporting mothers. It started first with me being a lactation consultant because when I had the babies in the NICU, the nurses would be like, "Mom, do you have breast milk? Do you have breast milk for us, Mom? Mom?" Because for them, they knew that breast milk was going to be the best thing to support the baby.
Yeah.
And usually, when a baby's in the NICU, the first thing they usually do is give them formula if there's no breast milk, especially when a mom has a baby so early. The breast milk hasn't, produced yet, or it's producing, so it's taking some time to come out. So, um, formula is usually the first thing they give this newborn small child, you
Mhm.
know. So and even in those cases, I said, let me at least focus on being a lactation consultant. But it wasn't to be a consultant; it was more for me to learn more about my body and what my body can do, and just being in that class and learning how wonderful our bodies are. Our bodies produce milk that nourishes our children. It's just that's amazing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There's no science that can try to break that down as like this is our natural bodies doing it. We were meant to do that. So then just being able to share that with women is something that, or mothers, women too, women who haven't didn't even think about children yet, finding out that their bodies can do this. This is what drove me now to become a doula and to support mothers in high risk circumstances.
Oh wow. Wow. No, that is amazing. And like you said, that the education piece is significant. I think it's come up throughout this conversation, just how important it is to be informed, to know your body, to know your options. And, especially speaking of breast milk, with the option of formula and how that is promoted so much, but just the significance of the milk that you produce is it's specifically designed for that life, like
Hmm.
everything that it needs. And I think that's one of the things that we have to drive home. And I appreciate this platform for allowing us to have these kind of dialogues, to speak about things that we don't normally talk about, and to normalize the understanding of breast milk and why in situations we say breast milk is the best milk, and there are other circumstances that may not allow for it to
Hmm.
be as ideal as we would like it to be. So we
Hmm.
have other options, but
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
normalizing the understanding that this is liquid gold. Like we want to promote, we want to, support mothers who want to undertake, the beauty of breastfeeding. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
appreciate that perspective of, wanting to learn yourself, and then, going out and getting that information, but not just for yourself, to share and support others in
Yes,
doing so.
yes.
So, how would you describe your practice right now? What are some of the services? I know you mentioned, you deal with high risk, you support women in high risk pregnancies.
Mhm.
What's the name of your company? What are some of the things that you provide?
Yeah, so my company is, or I'm a founder of Birthing Abundantly Maternal Services, and it's basically we provide services to moms who are in high risk, who are experiencing high risk births, and also having having postpartum care after that from kind of the after effects of having a high risk birth. So we support moms through that, and we try to make it as holistic as possible. Some of the services that I do is usually, even if the mom seems to be high risk, or if they say that she's high risk, still making sure that the mother is feeling confident still in her birth, and that is setting up, I usually support moms all the way up through to Chicago. So I'm in Detroit, so I service mothers in Michigan, and also in Chicago, around the Chicago area as well. So sometimes with high risk births, most of the times you have to be virtual, because now the doctors have intervened, and now they really want to make sure that this mother is healthy enough to be able to birth a child, or they will have to have the mother birth as soon as possible, depending on what the situation is. And so for me, it's making sure that I'm encouraging the mother every time that I speak to them once a week, making sure that they feel confident and empowered, talk about what the doctors are talking about, and making sure that they understand it, and making sure that I encourage them to advocate for themselves as well. If they don't understand something, to make sure that they say something, and me empowering them to do that. And then I'm on call about 24 hours every until once they like hit 29, or sorry, like about 20, or sorry, 30 weeks. That's when I kind of hit the ground running, where I'm available to them. But sometimes moms are even earlier. So my last mom, she had her baby at 20, or actually, yeah, 29 weeks. So we had started um, working with her early on. Once they said to her that they felt that her cervix was not holding the baby up, we started having conversations right then and there. And that was helpful. So these are kind of the services that I do. I support moms through that. With her, I really wanted to encourage her that she was going to make it to 40 weeks, even though the what the doctor was saying was that she wasn't. Because when you, I feel like there's a lot of times we don't, we're I know that when you go to a hospital or a doctor's office, they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's protocol. But sometimes it takes a lot of strain on a person to be able to process that because it's the unknown of what's going on inside of your body and what's going on inside of with the baby. You know what I mean? So empowering mothers is what I usually do around these times. And then after that, I usually visit them. This is where the postpartum care is. And it's either I do birth, postpartum care, or both. And with the postpartum care, I usually support moms through visiting them. So I visit them when the baby is in the NICU, and they're ready, asking them what's going on, how they're feeling, all of that. The hardest time for a mother is if they had the baby early and the baby has to be in the NICU and they have to leave the hospital and leave their baby at the hospital with a C-section or not expecting to have a baby that day and the baby basically it's not inside you anymore, and then being told you got to breastfeed right away because the baby needs milk, and then going home and having a space that probably was set up for the baby or not and realizing that something is missing.
Oh,
So being there to be able to support moms through that, that's part of the postpartum care that I do for high risk mothers. And when I say high risk, I don't want to say high risk mothers, but high risk births.
yeah.
Um, because every situation is different when it comes on to becoming high risk. Um, so with postpartum care, I usually support them that way. And then when the baby gets home, I come back and visit them, and then we make sure that the mother is feeling supported with the baby. Because when the baby comes from the NICU, depending if they got intubated or they had to have a feeding tube, there's a lot of reflux that happens because the baby's still trying to figure out how to like keep their spit down and things like that. So that sometimes if you don't watch them, they can kind of choke in their sleep. So comfortable with the baby being home, showing them different ways that they can take care of the baby holistically, encouraging them to breastfeed and breast pump too. So these are just kind of the things that I do with moms for postpartum care. I do mother's womb blessings too. So even if they're having a high risk pregnancy, I really encourage moms to do that because it empowers women, mothers again, to give birth. And also, I provide lactation services to mothers as well. And I just really I do a lot of writing, so I do provide a lot of my writings to support moms who are experiencing high risk. And so those are things that I do because I know that high risk um, births are really not talked about as often. And it needs to be talked about. Natural births are beautiful, and there's so many women like myself that would have loved to have a natural birth, but there's a lot of cases that that doesn't happen. So this is where Birthing Abundantly came about to be able to support moms like that, and also to let people know what's really happens in these spaces, and how you, as the person who's seeing this, can help in the best way.
No, that is so valuable. I mean, again, it's perspective and I can truly empathize with just everything that you just said in reference to what it all takes just from an emotional mental health standpoint.
Mhm,
And that's in addition to the physical, change and strain on the body. So
mhm,
it is significant that you reach out to those friends, you reach out to those, people in your circle or in your community who have had this experience. I mean, we do it anyway with the birth of a child, but especially in situations where they may have, had complications or a different outcome than what they initially thought it would be. So I
mhm,
truly appreciate, the work that you're doing, the perspective that you're coming from, and the way in which you are supporting families because,
mhm,
you know, a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, but to have the support to be able to, get through or, one day at a time, just to be able to process all of it. I think that is, significant. And I truly appreciate the services that you offered. And have they changed in any way, with the pandemic changing protocols and things like that? And if someone is not necessarily in your geographical area, are there ways that they can connect with you and work with you?
Yes, so I am available via email. I am also on Instagram, and currently, right now, I'm getting my website up so that people can reach me that way as well. And my services, my writings will all be there to just encourage mothers too. Right now, because of the pandemic and all of that. I've only been able to do a lot of virtual calls, and I'll do visits, but I kind of take it down to probably like maximum three or four.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing now. My goal, though, is to be in the C-section room. That's what I would love to do.
Mm.
I would like to be in that surgical room with them, empowering them, and especially if the spouse doesn't feel comfortable, because sometimes the spouse and partner, it's a lot for the partner too. They don't think about that.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
a lot. And even though it would be great for them to be there, but it would also be good for a doula to be in there too, to be able to support that. So that's something that I would like to do more, like to do. And I
Mm.
haven't been able to do that because of the pandemic. But once the doors open for that, I am in there,
Yeah.
because I feel like moms definitely need the support there. Also, just doing more talks with women and families too is something that I do as well. So so anyone can contact me about that as well if they need me to come to a place, or do a live like I'm doing here to kind of explain what happens in those kinds of spaces, and also to educate, like you've said, educate people and let them know like what's really happening and how they can support is something that I really encourage people to do. If they need to contact me, please, because I am not afraid to speak in those spaces and talk about what really happens.
Wow, wow. And just again, just so valuable the information that you shared. And I think on so many levels, that whole understanding of being proactive, of having these conversations well before, we are even considering conceiving and having a child, going through this childbirth process, I
Mhm.
think is just so valuable what your experience has been. And just that again, throughout the common thread is just education and empowerment. Those are two things that I feel,
Yes.
regardless of what the circumstances are, to have that on board, it makes a significant difference. And then to
Yes.
have the support that you offer to be able to advocate in the space and just really, I don't know, like humanize the experience. Like, this is not just a protocol of boom, boom, boom. Okay, this happens, so this happens, and now we got to do this. We are having an experience. And
Hmm.
so for you to be there to support throughout that process, to have that, I know that adds such, I can only imagine that adds such value in such a vulnerable and sacred space of birthing.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
I
Thank
truly,
you.
truly, truly appreciate that. I appreciate this conversation. I definitely want to make sure that people are able to get in contact with you. You can share the best ways, and I'll also put it down in the description so that they can, have the correct spelling and get right to you.
Yes. So my Gmail is birthingabundantly@gmail.com. Should I spell it?
Well, no, I'll type it out.
Okay.
Yes.
Birthingabundantly@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at BAM Maternal. So BAMATERNAL.
Amazing, amazing. Just beautiful. Well, I truly, truly appreciate you accepting the invitation and lending your voice to this platform. I took away such value from our conversation, and I trust others will too. So if you have, please share, share, share. We can't have this conversation enough to be able to normalize this experience, breastfeeding, being empowered and educated in this process, and then having the support, regardless of what the outcome is, and knowing that support is there is so significant. So I truly appreciate you. Thank
Yes.
you for what you do.
Thank you for what you do and having this platform for me and others to be able to speak and talk about their experiences, their businesses. So thank you for this platform as well and what you do as well. It's really appreciated.
Appreciate you. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.